It was a busy Saturday afternoon when Karen, an older woman with a sharp gaze, walked into the local grocery store. The store was crowded, as usual, with people rushing to get their shopping done before the weekend. Among them was the Black Lady, a calm, hard-working woman who had just finished her shift at work. She walked down the aisles, picking out some items she needed for dinner that evening. The Black Lady grabbed a loaf of bread and a carton of milk, 2 items she had planned to buy. She didn't seem to notice Karen at first, but Karen, standing by the next aisle, noticed her right away. There was something about the way the Black Lady moved, the way she looked at the products on the shelves, that made Karen suspicious. Karen was known for her short temper and often looked for reasons to complain. It wasn't long before she started watching the Black Lady closely, her eyes narrowing as she kept following her around the store. Karen thought she saw the woman tuck something into her bag, though there was no evidence to suggest anything was out of place. But in her mind, Karen was sure of it. This woman was shoplifting. With a feeling of superiority, Karen walked straight up to the Black Lady. "Excuse me," she said in a voice loud enough for other shoppers to hear. "I saw you slip something into your bag. You need to show me what's in there." The Black Lady looked up, startled. "What? I didn't take anything," she replied, confusion in her voice. She didn't know what was going on, but Karen was insistent. "I know what I saw," Karen said, her tone firm and accusing. "You can't just walk out of here without showing me your bag." Her eyes were cold, and the woman's voice was demanding. The Black Lady didn't react with anger or frustration. Instead, she stayed calm, trying to make sense of the situation. "I haven't stolen anything," she said again. "You can check my bag if you'd like, but I'm telling you, I paid for everything in this basket." Karen wasn't backing down. "I want to see inside." Now, she was drawing attention, and some nearby customers began looking at the scene. A few people whispered to each other, sensing something wasn't quite right. Others quietly turned away, not wanting to get involved. The Black Lady remained composed, still holding her ground. "I didn't steal anything," she repeated, her voice even but firm. "I'm happy to show you, but I'm asking you to please stop accusing me. It's unfair." Some of the people in the store began to gather around, noticing the tension building. The Black Lady could feel their eyes on her, but she refused to let the situation get the best of her. She had dealt with moments like this before, people unfairly judging her because of the color of her skin. But today, she wasn't going to let it slide without standing up for herself. Karen didn't care. She was so certain of what she believed was happening that she raised her voice even more. "Security," she yelled, calling for the store staff. "This woman is trying to steal from the store. You need to do something about this." The Black Lady looked around at the crowd of people, some of whom were now watching, some confused, others beginning to speak quietly among themselves. She could feel her heart racing, but she wasn't going to let Karen's accusation define the moment. Instead, she stood tall, silently waiting for the store manager to arrive, knowing the truth would soon come out. In that moment, the store became more than just a place to shop. It became the stage for an unexpected and uncomfortable drama, one that would reveal the true character of those involved. And though it was only the beginning, the Black Lady knew that the truth, in the end, would set things right. The tension in the store was palpable, with everyone watching the confrontation unfold. The Black Lady, though calm, could feel the eyes of the customers on her. She wanted to move past this situation, but Karen was making it impossible. The store manager had already checked her bag, and there was no evidence to suggest she had done anything wrong. Still, Karen continued to make her accusations. Finally, the manager, growing more frustrated with Karen's refusal to let go, turned to the store security officer, who had just arrived on the scene. "Could you please assist us here?" he asked, his voice firm but polite. The security officer, a tall man with a stern look, approached the group. He looked at the Black Lady's bag again, as well as Karen, who was still standing with her arms crossed and an expression of disbelief on her face. "What's going on here?" the security officer asked, his tone professional. Karen immediately spoke up, her voice shaky with anger. "This woman is trying to steal. I saw her slip something into her bag, and now she's refusing to show me what's inside." The security officer glanced at the black lady and then at the store manager, who nodded toward the bag. "She's shown us her bag," the manager explained. "There's nothing here that she hasn't paid for." Karen shook her head, her face flushed with frustration. "I saw her put something in there," she insisted, "but there was no proof, no evidence." Her words were starting to lose their weight as the staff and customers began to see her for what she was, someone who had unfairly judged another person. The security officer turned to the black lady and asked, "Would you mind showing us your receipt, ma'am?" The black lady nodded and reached into her purse to pull out the receipt for her items. She handed it over without hesitation. "Here's my receipt. You can check it if you want," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The security officer glanced at the receipt, confirming that the items in the black lady's bag matched exactly what she had paid for. He turned to the store manager and gave a slight nod. "Everything seems in order here," he said. Karen's face tightened with embarrassment. Her accusation was completely false, and there was no way to deny it. The black lady had done nothing wrong, yet Karen still stood there, unwilling to admit her mistake. The store manager looked at Karen, his expression stern. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the situation. This lady has not stolen anything. You've made a false accusation, and it's causing unnecessary distress for both her and other customers." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. The weight of the truth was sinking in, and she could feel the eyes of everyone around her. Eyes that had once been on the black lady, now turning toward her, full of judgment. "I think it's time for you to leave," the manager said firmly. "Your behavior is unacceptable, and I don't want you to cause any more trouble for our customers or for this lady." Karen's face was beet red. She was humiliated, but instead of apologizing or admitting her wrong, she clutched her purse tightly and glared at the black lady. She said nothing, but it was clear that she was struggling with the realization that she had been caught in her own mistake. The black lady stood tall and calm, though she felt a surge of relief inside. She had expected this kind of treatment, but she knew that standing her ground was the right thing to do. The store staff had done the right thing, and the truth had come out. Karen, now fully embarrassed and defeated, turned on her heel and walked out of the store without another word. The black lady watched her leave, feeling a sense of justice in the air. As soon as Karen was out of sight, the store manager turned to her and gave a small nod of appreciation. "Thank you for your patience," he said kindly. "We don't tolerate that kind of behavior here." The black lady smiled and nodded back. "I appreciate your help," she replied softly, feeling grateful for the support. As the store returned to normal, the other customers began to move again, some giving the black lady small smiles or nods of approval. She had handled the situation with grace, and they had seen it all. Though the moment had been uncomfortable, it had also been a reminder of how important it was to stand up against false accusations and unfair treatment. As the store slowly returned to normal, the black lady felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had been unfairly accused, but now the truth was finally coming to light. Karen had left in a hurry, embarrassed, and without a word of apology. The manager and security officer had handled everything professionally, but something in the air still felt tense. The black lady had expected people to stand up for what was right, but she wasn't sure if anyone had really seen the full picture. While she was still in the store, the manager began walking toward the security office. "I'm going to review the security footage to make sure everything was handled properly," he said to the black lady. "I'll be right back." The black lady nodded, appreciating the manager's commitment to getting to the bottom of things. She remained by the checkout counter, her fingers lightly touching the items in her basket as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. It wasn't just about this store. It was about something bigger. Moments like this, where people are wrongly accused, happen more often than most people realize. But today, she felt that her voice had been heard, and that mattered to her. A few minutes later, the manager returned. "I checked the footage," he said, a serious look on his face. "It's clear. You didn't steal anything. In fact, you did exactly what you said. You paid for everything. There was no reason for that lady to accuse you of anything." The black lady exhaled, finally feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. She was grateful that the manager had taken the time to double-check the situation and ensure that she wasn't just dismissed. The footage clearly showed her walking through the aisles, selecting the items she wanted, and then going to the checkout where she paid for them without hesitation. The store manager continued, "The security footage shows you picking up the bread, the milk, and everything else. You can see that the payment went through. There's no evidence to support what that woman claimed." The black lady smiled softly, her gratitude shining through. "Thank you for taking the time to review it," she said. She was glad to know that the truth was not just on her side, but also supported by the evidence. It was a relief to know that this incident wasn't just her word against Karen's. The proof was clear to everyone who cared to look. The manager nodded. "It's important to us that customers feel safe here. That includes making sure that everyone is treated fairly, no matter what." The black lady's heart warmed at his words. It felt good to be treated with respect, to know that she wasn't just another person caught in a misunderstanding. She wasn't just a victim in this situation. She had stood her ground and kept her dignity intact, and now the evidence backed up her honesty. As she turned to leave the store, a few of the other customers who had witnessed the scene approached her. One elderly woman smiled warmly at her. "I'm glad it worked out for you," she said gently. "You handled that with so much patience. I don't think I could have stayed so calm." The black lady smiled back, a little surprised by the kindness. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I just knew I had to stay calm and let the truth speak for itself." Another shopper, a man with a small child, nodded as he passed by. "I saw the whole thing. You didn't deserve that. I'm glad they took care of it." The black lady felt her heart swell with appreciation. These small acts of kindness meant the world to her. She had faced this kind of unfair treatment before, but today had been different. She had been treated with dignity, and now she had a sense of justice and closure that she hadn't expected. As she walked out of the store, she realized that while the experience was unpleasant, it had shown her the importance of standing firm in the face of injustice. The store had handled the situation fairly, the evidence was on her side, and in the end, the truth had triumphed over false accusations. And that, she thought, was the most important part. As the black lady walked out of the store, the events of the past few minutes replayed in her mind. Despite the relief of the situation being resolved, she couldn't shake the feeling of injustice that had clung to her all throughout the confrontation. Karen's accusations had been a harsh reminder of how easily people could be judged without reason. But now, as the store became quieter, the black lady knew one thing for certain. The truth had finally come to light. Outside the store, the afternoon sun shone brightly, but for Karen, the world felt a little darker. She had stormed out in a hurry, trying to hold on to whatever pride she had left, but she couldn't shake the weight of what had just happened. Her attempt to accuse the black lady had failed, and now everyone knew the truth. The security footage had proven that she was wrong. And the worst part for Karen, she had made the accusation in front of other customers, meaning her humiliation was now inescapable. As Karen walked toward her car, she could feel the heat of her embarrassment rising. She had been so sure, so confident that the black lady had taken something without paying. But now, the evidence was clear. She hadn't even apologized to the black lady or anyone else for the stress and chaos she had caused. Instead, Karen had tried to save face, refusing to admit she had been wrong. She couldn't help but wonder how many others had seen the whole situation and were silently judging her. Back in the store, the atmosphere had shifted. Customers who had witnessed the scene were beginning to talk among themselves. The black lady had been calm, patient, and respectful. In contrast, Karen had made an accusation based on nothing more than her own assumptions, causing a scene that had disrupted the entire store. A few of the customers who had been near the checkout approached the black lady as she prepared to leave. The elderly woman who had spoken earlier now smiled at her again, her face filled with kindness. "I'm glad it all worked out," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "You handled it so well. I think most people would have lost their temper by now." The black lady smiled gratefully. "Thank you for saying that. I know it's easy to get upset when someone accuses you of something you didn't do, but I just wanted to stay calm." The man with the child, who had also witnessed the scene, nodded in agreement. "It's not right that you had to go through that," he said, "but it's good to see that the truth came out in the end." The black lady felt a warmth in her chest as she looked at the supportive faces around her. While Karen had tried to cause trouble, the kindness and understanding of the people in the store were what truly stood out to her. It was a reminder that, no matter how difficult the situation, there were always people who would stand up for what was right. Inside the store, the manager had finished his conversation with the security officer and walked over to the black lady. "I just wanted to apologize again for what happened," he said sincerely. "You didn't deserve any of that. We take these things seriously, and I'm glad we were able to resolve it quickly." The black lady smiled and nodded, appreciating his words. "Thank you for handling it so well. It wasn't easy, but I'm glad the truth came out." As she left the store, the black lady couldn't help but reflect on the ordeal. It wasn't just about the incident at the store. It was about the bigger picture of how people often judge others without understanding the full story. She had faced these challenges before, but today she had stood strong and had seen the power of truth and fairness at work. Karen, on the other hand, would likely leave this experience with a lesson learned the hard way. It was clear that her false accusation had left a mark on her reputation, and while she may not have apologized, the truth had made her attempt to cause trouble irrelevant. The black lady had faced an uncomfortable moment, but in the end, she had remained true to herself, and that was what mattered most. A few weeks passed, and things in the community slowly returned to normal. The black lady continued with her everyday routine, but she couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of accomplishment. The incident in the store had been difficult, but it had led to something bigger than she had anticipated. It had sparked conversations, led to apologies, and brought people together in a way that no one could have predicted. One afternoon, she ran into the store manager at a local park. He was there with his young daughter, and they smiled when they saw each other. "Hey, how's it going?" he greeted her warmly. "Good," she replied, smiling back. "How's your daughter doing?" "She's great. Loves playing here," he said, motioning to the swings. "Listen, I've been meaning to thank you again for how you handled everything that day. It wasn't easy, but your patience really helped us make sure the situation was resolved properly. It really made a difference." The black lady nodded, appreciating his words. "I just wanted things to be fair. Sometimes, the truth is all we need to clear things up." The manager agreed. "Exactly. And I can tell it's been a learning experience for everyone involved. I've had people come to me since then, telling me how they've started paying more attention to the way they treat others. So, in a way, your calm approach had an impact on a lot of people." That thought made her feel proud. She hadn't set out to be a teacher or a symbol, but the way she had handled the situation had left a lasting mark on the people who had witnessed it. As they talked, she realized that these small moments of kindness, fairness, and understanding often made the biggest difference. Later that week, as she was walking through the park, she noticed the elderly woman who had spoken up for her in the store. She was sitting on a bench, reading a book, and smiled when she saw the black lady. "Hi there," the elderly woman called out. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the coffee shop. I wanted to tell you something." Curious, the black lady approached and sat beside her. "What's that?" The elderly woman put down her book, her eyes soft with kindness. "I think you've really changed how people think about situations like the one at the store." I've heard people mention it around town, and they've started talking more about giving others the benefit of the doubt, not judging so quickly." The black lady felt a rush of warmth. "I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I didn't want to just get through the situation. I wanted it to help others think about how we treat people. Sometimes the smallest things have the biggest effect," the elderly woman said with a smile. "You showed that." As the black lady left the park that day, she felt more confident in the path she had chosen. The situation had been difficult, but the way it had been handled, calmly, respectfully, and without jumping to conclusions, had made all the difference. It had not only cleared her name, but it had also sparked change in the way people looked at one another. It wasn't just about one person's story. It was about the impact that one person could have on the whole community. The black lady understood that this wasn't the end. The lesson about fairness, respect, and understanding wasn't something that could be learned in a single moment. It was something that had to be practiced every day. But today, as she walked home, she was proud of the role she had played. She had faced a difficult situation with dignity, and in doing so, she had helped open the eyes of others to the importance of kindness and fairness. Her story, in the end, wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had learned from it. And that, she realized, was the most important part. As the black lady walked away from the store, she couldn't help but reflect on the whole situation. Despite the sense of relief that came from the truth being revealed, there was still a lingering feeling of hurt. She had been falsely accused, not just because of a misunderstanding, but because of something much deeper, an unfair judgment based on assumptions. But as she walked to her car, she reminded herself that she had handled the situation with grace, and that was something to be proud of. The truth had come out, but it didn't erase the sting of being treated as if she were guilty when she wasn't. The moment in the store had been uncomfortable, but it also showed her just how far things had come. More than just a simple misunderstanding, it was a reflection of how people sometimes judge others based on their appearance or preconceived ideas. But today, she had stood firm, and in the end, she had found strength in the face of adversity. She sat in her car for a moment, taking a deep breath. It wasn't just about the accusation. It was about the way she had carried herself throughout the entire ordeal. She hadn't lost her temper, hadn't let the false accusations define her. Instead, she had remained calm, answered questions, and let the evidence speak for itself. That was the strength she was most proud of. The incident wasn't just a personal victory. She knew that moments like these, when people stand their ground and demand fairness, help bring about change. It wasn't easy, but each time a person faced these situations and spoke out against unfair treatment, it moved society a little closer to understanding and equality. As the black lady drove home, she thought about the conversations that would happen in the days to come. Her hope was that the story of what happened at the store wouldn't be one where people would just shake their heads and forget. She wanted it to be a reminder that no one should be judged based on how they look, a reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and fairness, no matter their background. That evening, as she sat in her living room, she reflected on the support she had received from the other customers in the store. The elderly woman and the man with the child had spoken up, and their words of encouragement meant more to her than they could ever know. It wasn't just about the apology from the store manager or the fact that the situation had been resolved. It was about the simple acts of kindness from strangers who recognized injustice when they saw it. That was what gave her hope. The next day, the black lady went to work as usual, her mind still processing the events of the previous day. But she didn't let the incident weigh her down. She knew she had done the right thing, and that was enough. She had faced a challenge, stood tall, and come out on the other side with her dignity intact. In the grand scheme of things, it was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, and every small victory added up, helping to pave the way for a future where kindness and understanding ruled, not assumptions and prejudice. Later that week, she shared the story with a few close friends, explaining how she had stood her ground and remained calm during the entire ordeal. Her friends were proud of her, But she knew it wasn't about seeking praise. It was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. She had learned something valuable from the experience. No matter what happens, she would always have the strength to face challenges head-on and to rise above the prejudice and judgment of others. And that strength, she realized, was something no one could ever take away from her. The following day, the black lady returned to the same store to pick up a few more groceries. She was hoping that the unpleasant incident from the day before was behind her, but as soon as she walked through the doors, she could feel that the atmosphere was still heavy. There was a slight tension in the air, as if the events from yesterday had lingered with some of the shoppers and employees. She made her way through the aisles, grabbing a few items, trying to focus on her task. But as she passed by the checkout, she saw someone she hadn't expected to see: Karen. She was standing near the customer service desk, speaking with the store manager. The black lady's heart sank slightly as she realized that the situation from yesterday had not ended as she had hoped. The store manager saw her and nodded in her direction. Karen's gaze, however, immediately fixed on the black lady, her face flushed with embarrassment. The black lady knew that Karen had left the store in a hurry the day before, and that she hadn't apologized for the false accusations. But now, there was an awkward silence between the two women. Karen glanced around, avoiding eye contact for a moment. But then she took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sounding shaky. "I wanted to apologize for what happened yesterday." The black lady looked at her, unsure of what to say at first. She had been wronged, and Karen's apology felt like it was coming too late. But she wasn't one to hold grudges, so she listened carefully. I made a mistake," Karen continued, her voice quieter now. "I shouldn't have accused you of stealing. I was wrong to assume that you were doing something wrong without any proof. I'm sorry for causing you all that trouble." The black lady stood there, listening. The apology wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was an apology nonetheless. She had expected it to be more difficult for Karen to admit her mistake. But there she was, standing before her, trying to make things right. "I appreciate your apology," the black lady said calmly, her voice steady. "But it's important that we recognize how easily people can be judged based on assumptions. It's not just about this store or yesterday. It's about how we treat each other every day." Karen nodded, her face still red with shame. "I understand," she said quietly. I'll try to be more mindful from now on. I didn't realize how hurtful my actions were until now. I'm truly sorry." The black lady gave a small smile, a mix of understanding and acceptance in her eyes. She had no intention of making Karen feel worse, but she wanted her to understand that the consequences of her actions went beyond just one mistake. It was a lesson that, hopefully, Karen would take with her. "Thank you for your apology," the black lady said once more. "But remember, it's not just about saying sorry. It's about showing it through actions. We all have to do better, and that starts with how we treat others." With that, she turned and walked away, not wanting to linger on the awkwardness of the moment. She knew that Karen's apology, while important, was just the first step. The real change would come with time, as people learned to treat each other with more understanding and kindness. As the black lady continued with her shopping, she couldn't help but feel a small sense of closure. The situation hadn't gone exactly as she'd expected, but it had been resolved. Karen had apologized, and while that didn't erase everything, it was a step toward healing. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. The days following the incident in the store felt different for the black lady. Though life quickly returned to normal, the memory of what had happened stayed with her. It wasn't just the personal challenge she had faced. It was the ripple effect that she hoped would continue beyond that one situation. Her encounter with Karen had become a small reminder to everyone involved of how important it was to be mindful of our actions and judgments. Around town, word of the confrontation spread, and people began talking about it in passing conversations. The black lady didn't mind. She wasn't looking for attention or sympathy, But she was glad that the story had opened up an opportunity for people to reflect on how assumptions and stereotypes affect the way we treat one another. A few days after Karen's apology, the black lady bumped into a few familiar faces from the store at a local coffee shop. She recognized the elderly woman who had spoken up for her the day before. The woman waved warmly as they both walked toward the counter. "You know," the elderly woman said as they stood in line, "I've been thinking about what happened. It's not just about what went down in that store. It's about how often people judge others without even knowing them." The black lady nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "You're right. It's so easy to make assumptions, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. I hope that the way things were handled in that store makes people stop and think next time." The elderly woman smiled gently. "I think it will. People need to see when something is wrong and not just stand by. I'm glad I could help speak up, but I could tell you were the one who really made a difference with how you handled yourself. You didn't lose your temper, and that shows strength." The black lady felt a warmth in her heart. It was moments like this that made her realize how important it was to stand firm in the face of unfairness. She didn't have to raise her voice or make a scene. Just by remaining calm and steady, she had shown the people around her that dignity and respect should always come first. A few days later, she was at a community event where she met more people who had witnessed the incident in the store. As they spoke to her, many of them expressed similar feelings. They had been taken aback by Karen's accusation, and they were grateful that things had been handled so well. Some of them even said that they had been inspired to be more conscious of how they treated others. The black lady couldn't help but feel that perhaps the ripple effect was already starting. If just one person walked away from the incident thinking twice before making a judgment, then it had been worth it. Sometimes it only takes a single moment to spark change, and she realized that this had been one of those moments. Her feelings of pride weren't from the apology Karen had given, or even the fact that she had been proven innocent. It was the fact that the community had taken notice and started having conversations about fairness, respect, and kindness. She hadn't set out to be a role model or a symbol for anything, but her actions had spoken louder than any words could. As time passed, she hoped that the lessons learned from her experience would continue to resonate. The world could always use more understanding, and she was just one person in the ongoing effort to make sure that the next time a moment of unfairness arose, people would pause before jumping to conclusions. By staying true to herself, she had shown that one individual could stand up for what was right, and in doing so, inspire others to do the same. She left the coffee shop that day feeling lighter, knowing that despite the uncomfortable situation, she had turned a difficult moment into something meaningful. And as she continued with her life, she carried that strength and that hope with her. A few weeks passed, and things in the community slowly returned to normal. The black lady continued with her everyday routine, but she couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of accomplishment. The incident in the store had been difficult, but it had led to something bigger than she had anticipated. It had sparked conversations, led to apologies, and brought people together in a way that no one could have predicted. One afternoon, she ran into the store manager at a local park. He was there with his young daughter, and they smiled when they saw each other. "Hey, how's it going?" He greeted her warmly. "Good," she replied, smiling back. "How's your daughter doing?" "She's great. Loves playing here," he said, motioning to the swings. "Listen, I've been meaning to thank you again for how you handled everything that day. It wasn't easy, but your patience really helped us make sure the situation was resolved properly. It really made a difference." The black lady nodded, appreciating his words. "I just wanted things to be fair. Sometimes, the truth is all we need to clear things up." The manager agreed. "Exactly. And I can tell it's been a learning experience for everyone involved. I've had people come to me since then, telling me how they've started paying more attention to the way they treat others. So, in a way, your calm approach had an impact on a lot of people." That thought made her feel proud. She hadn't set out to be a teacher or a symbol, but the way she had handled the situation had left a lasting mark on the people who had witnessed it. As they talked, she realized that these small moments of kindness, fairness, and understanding often made the biggest difference. Later that week, as she was walking through the park, she noticed the elderly woman who had spoken up for her in the store. She was sitting on a bench, reading a book, and smiled when she saw the black lady. "Hi there," the elderly woman called out. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the coffee shop. I wanted to tell you something." Curious, the black lady approached and sat beside her. "What's that?" The elderly woman put down her book, her eyes soft with kindness. "I think you've really changed how people think about situations like the one at the store. I've heard people mention it around town, and they've started talking more about giving others the benefit of the doubt, not judging so quickly." The black lady felt a rush of warmth. "I'm glad to hear that. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I didn't want to just get through the situation. I wanted it to help others think about how we treat people. Sometimes the smallest things have the biggest effect," the elderly woman said with a smile. "You showed that." As the black lady left the park that day, she felt more confident in the path she had chosen. The situation had been difficult, but the way it had been handled, calmly, respectfully, and without jumping to conclusions, had made all the difference. It had not only cleared her name, but it had also sparked change in the way people looked at one another. It wasn't just about one person's story. It was about the impact that one person could have on the whole community. The black lady understood that this wasn't the end. The lesson about fairness, respect, and understanding wasn't something that could be learned in a single moment. It was something that had to be practiced every day. But today, as she walked home, she was proud of the role she had played. She had faced a difficult situation with dignity, and in doing so, she had helped open the eyes of others to the importance of kindness and fairness. Her story, in the end, wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had learned from it. And that, she realized, was the most important part.